There are moments that divide your life into before and after. For me, that moment came the day they found my sister's body, folded inside a suitcase that had drifted downriver, as if the world itself wanted to deliver her back to me. Even now, years later, I can't say her name aloud without feeling the weight of that suitcase pressing against my chest. I used to believe the worst kind of pain came from losing someone, but I've learned there's something crueler, losing them in a way that forces you to imagine their last moments, over and over until the thought itself becomes a kind of violence. We were only 3 years apart. She was 24 when she died, and I was 27. I had always been the quiet one, the observer, the one who stayed behind while she chased the world. She was light, where I was stillness. She could walk into any room and make it brighter, while I learned to find safety in shadows. People loved her easily, and I used to think that made her invincible. But beauty, I've realized, doesn't protect you from darkness. Sometimes it invites it closer. The police called me that morning. Their voices were calm in that professional, detached way that only people who deal with tragedy daily can manage. They said her name, said they had found remains consistent with her description, and asked if I could come in. The rest blurred. I remember the drive to the station, the rain, the sound of the windshield wipers, the numbness in my hands. I remember thinking, this couldn't be real. She had texted me just 3 nights before. It had been short, almost cryptic. I think I made a mistake. At the time, I didn't reply. We'd argued that week about the man she was seeing. I didn't like him. He was older, controlling, too charming in the way men can be when they want to hide something. She told me I didn't understand him, that he made her feel seen. I told her love shouldn't make you scared. We stopped talking after that. And then 3 nights later, she was gone. When I went to identify her, I thought I'd faint. They didn't show me much, just a bracelet I had given her years ago, the one she swore she'd never take off. It had her initials engraved on the inside. I pressed my fingers against the metal, still cold from the evidence bag, and I felt the world tilt. That was the moment before it became after. The investigation was everywhere. News outlets, tabloids, headlines that made her sound like a story instead of a person. Young woman found in suitcase near Riverside. They printed her smiling photo next to the word murdered. And something in me broke each time I saw it. People online speculated. They made theories, drew connections, treated her life like a puzzle to be solved instead of a tragedy to be mourned. But I needed answers. I couldn't let her become just another case file. I started going through her apartment, carefully at first, then obsessively. Every drawer, every photo, every letter. I found notebooks filled with half-finished poetry and sketches of a man's face. In one of the journals there were pages ripped out. The edges were jagged, like she'd done it in a hurry. That's when I found the envelope. It was taped under the drawer of her desk, hidden in a place only someone desperate would think to look. Inside were photographs, grainy, taken from her phone, of a black car parked outside her window, the same car appearing in different places. In some, you could see a reflection of a man standing across the street. Same posture, same coat. And in one photo, taken late at night, you could see his face clearly. Her boyfriend. The police already suspected him. He had a record, not for violence, but for manipulation, for fraud, for the kind of lies that destroy quietly. When they questioned him, he said he hadn't seen her in days, claimed they'd broken up, but her phone record said otherwise. He had called her that night, 7 times. The last call lasted exactly 4 minutes. For weeks, I lived between grief and obsession. I replayed every memory, every conversation, searching for the moment I could have saved her. I remembered how she'd once told me that love made her feel alive, and I hated myself for not realizing that sometimes love is just another word for danger. When the arrest finally came, I didn't feel relief. They found his fingerprints on the suitcase handle, his DNA on the zipper. He confessed eventually, but not out of guilt, out of exhaustion. His story was almost mechanical, an argument, a shove, an accident. But what he described wasn't an accident. It was cruelty disguised as panic. People said justice was served, but justice doesn't feel like peace when the person you loved most in the world is gone. Justice is paperwork, trials, and headlines that fade long before the grief does. I attended every hearing, sitting quietly in the back, staring at him. He never looked at me. I used to wonder if he ever saw her face when he closed his eyes, or if he'd learned to live with forgetting. After the sentencing, I stopped going out. I deleted social media, quit my job, and moved to a smaller town. Everyone told me I needed time. But grief isn't a clock you can reset. It's a ghost that moves in whenever silence does. For months, I lived in that silence, surrounded by her things. The suitcase, the one that had carried her body, was returned as evidence after the trial. I should have destroyed it. Instead, I kept it in the attic, as if holding on to it meant keeping her close. But one evening, while going through her notebooks again, I found something I'd missed before, a letter folded between the pages of a half-finished poem. It was dated 2 days before she disappeared. The handwriting was hers, but the words were strange, desperate, rushed. She wrote about someone following her, someone she couldn't name. She said she didn't trust anyone anymore, not even the man she thought she loved. She ended it with a sentence that still echoes in my mind: if something happens to me, tell the truth, even if no one wants to hear it. That's when I realized the story wasn't over. He hadn't acted alone. The more I dug, the more pieces didn't fit. Bank records showed she'd been transferring money to someone months before her death. Small amounts, regular, always labeled rent, but she already had an apartment. The recipient's name was blurred in the statement, but with time and persistence, I traced it. It belonged to his ex-wife. The same woman had left him years ago after filing a restraining order that mysteriously disappeared. I reached out to her. When we finally spoke, her voice trembled as if she'd been waiting for this call her entire life. She told me my sister had contacted her weeks before her death, said she'd found something that could ruin him. She wanted to help. She never got the chance. That night, I sat alone with the letter and the photos, the truth pressing against my chest like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. My sister hadn't just died because she loved the wrong man. She died because she tried to save someone else. I don't believe in closure. There's no clean ending for something like this. There's only understanding and the unbearable task of living with it. Sometimes I visit the river where they found her. I sit by the water, imagining the suitcase floating down, heavy with truth, waiting for someone to find it. I tell her I'm sorry for not believing her, for not answering that last message, for not being there. And sometimes, when the wind shifts and the water glimmers just right, I swear I can feel her beside me. In the way of ghosts, but in the way of memories, reminders that love, even when it ends in tragedy, never truly disappears. It just changes shape. I've spent years telling myself I live for her now, but some nights I realize she's still the one keeping me alive.